Good evening, everyone. This week's Parshat is Parshas Yitro, Tavshin Pei Daled. We'll start from the beginning. Parak Ches, chapter 18, Pasuk Aleph, verse 1. Vayishma Yisro Kohen Midyan Chaysen Moshe. Yisro, the Kohen of Midyan, which will translate now to be the minister of Midyan, Chaysen Moshe, the father of Moshe, heard. Eskal Asher Asar Lekim LeMoshe Yisrael Amoy. All that Hashem had done, all that Elokim, Hashem, had done for Moshe and for Yisrael, his nation. Ki Haitzi Hashem es Yisrael Mitzrayim, for God, that God had taken out Israel from Egypt. Vayikach Yisro Chaysen Moshe Sipora Eshes Moshe Chashilucha. Yisro, the father of Moshe, took Sipora, Moshe's wife, after he sent her away. Veshnei Banah, with her two sons. Asher Shemo Echad Gershom. The name of one was Gershom, Ki Amar Ger Hayisi Beretz Nachriya, for he said, I was a stranger in a strange land. The Shemo Echad Eliezer, the name of the other one was Eliezer, Kevekei Avi Be'ezri, for the God of my father was at my aid. Vaytzei Mecher of Paroi, and he saved me from the sword of Paro. Vayavoy Yisro Chayse Moshe ben Avishtai Moshe. Yisro, the father of Moshe, came with his children, with his sons, with his wife to Moshe. Ela midbar asher uchein sham har Elokim, to the desert where he encamped there at the mountain of God. The mountain of God is Mount Sinai. Okay. Vayomer el Moshe, Yisro said to Moshe, he sent the messenger, Ani chaysencha Yisro bo'elecha, I, your father and Yisro, have come to you. V'ishtecha, and your wife, V'shnei Ima, and her two sons with her. Vayetze Moshe l'kas chaysnai. Moshe went out to greet his father-in-law. Vayishtachu vayishakloi. He bowed and he kissed him. Vayeshalu Israel l'shalom. And each person inquired about the welfare of the other one. Vayavayu ha'ela. And they came to the tent. Vayisaper Moshe l'chaysnai. Moshe told his father-in-law, Eis kol asher asa Hashem l'far l'Mitzrayim, all that God had done to Paro and to Egypt, Alodais Yisrael, because of the Jewish people. All the trouble that found them on the way, Hashem, and Hashem saved them. Okay, so this is where Yisro comes after it. The pasuk says he heard about the exodus from Egypt, so it says that he came to Moshe, and as we read already, we read a number of psukim how Moshe tells Yisro what happened. Yisro declares his recognition of the greatness of Hashem. They have a meal together, and then the Parsha talks about how Yisro saw Moshe judging everybody on his own, and how Yisro then went and advised Moshe to set up a court system. So the question is like this, and that's what we're going to focus on tonight. When did Yisro show up? If I were to ask you, when did Yisro come? At what point did Yisro come? Before the giving of the Torah or after the giving of the Torah?
Before.
How do you know? Okay, so did he come before? Did he come after? So it happens to be an argument in the Talmud. You have in the Talmud in Zvachim, it says, there's one opinion that says he came before the Torah was given, and there's one opinion that says he came after the Torah was given. Now,
this is first the heart. It means usually in the use come very quickly.
Therefore,
you come immediately.
Okay, so you're saying that it sounds like the pasuk says he heard about, that Hashem took the people out of Egypt, and Yisro came. He heard about it, and he came. Sounds like he came right away. Okay, that's a good argument. And that would be an argument to say that he came before the Torah was given. Another argument to say it is because, in this week's Parsha, after the story of Yisro and Moshe setting up the court system, what is the next thing the Parsha talks about? The giving of the Torah. That's the next part of the Parsha. Yeah. So just reading the Parsha, it says Yisro came, and it's before the Torah was given. That itself would imply, right, that Yisro came before the Torah was given. Now, we know there's a rule that the Torah does not necessarily follow a chronological order. But at the same time, the assumed position, the default is that it is in order, unless you know otherwise. So it would seem, again, just based on how everything is laid out in the Chumash, that you have Yisro coming for the giving of the Torah, and that's when he came. Okay. So now what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through the commentary of the Ramban, Nachmanides, of how he approaches this and how he lays out both opinions. He shows proofs for both opinions. He's going to side with one opinion more than the other, but he actually starts off proving the explanation that actually came after the Torah was given. He first starts with the proofs or the supports for that. Okay, so what's the first support that he brings for the opinion that says that Yisro came after the Torah was given? So take a look at Pasuk Hey, verse 5. Vayavoy Yisro chaysen Moshe v'navishtoyel Moshe. Yisro came ela midbar, to the desert, asher uchayna sham, that he was camping there, meaning that Moshe was camping there, har Elokim, at the mountain of God. That sounds like Yisro came to Moshe, to the desert, where Moshe was camping at the mountain of God. That would sound like Moshe is where? He's at Mount Sinai. That means the Jewish people are already at Mount Sinai when Yisro comes. So that would already kind of lend itself, number one, to say that he came, I mean, it sounds like he came, if you're telling me that he came when the Jewish people are at Mount Sinai, okay, well, it could be that it means, just as it came to Mount Sinai, that's when Yisro showed up, and it was before the Torah was given. But the fact that I think the Ramban actually stresses the fact that it says to the desert that he camped there, that he was camping there. Sounds like he had been camping there for a while. Because if you look in the Parsha, on the first day of Sivan, they arrive at Mount Sinai. 6 days later, they have the Torah. So, and we know that they actually remained near Mount Sinai. They camped in Mount Sinai for a year. So if I'm not mistaken, from the words of the Ramban, if I understand him correctly, he's saying the words to the desert that he was camping there sounds like he's been camping there for a while. And it says camping there, Har Elokim, at the mountain of God. But again, the mere fact that it says that it's happening at Mount Sinai would make it sound like it didn't happen right after. Right after it happened, Yisro heard about it and he came. Doesn't necessarily sound like that. Because, again, exactly how long it took for them to get to Mount Sinai, I'm not sure. But this already at least it lends itself a little bit to the idea, at least somewhat, it lends itself to the idea that he came after the Torah was given. But there's more to it than that.
But after that, I believe, after they receive, they stay still camping?
Not right away. They were there for about a year.
After receiving, they stay, continue staying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that is support number one. It says that they came to Moshe, who was camping at the mountain of God. Now, unless you'll say camping means they had just been there, then maybe it's not such a proof. But it definitely lends itself to the fact and to the idea. And again, I think the Ramban says the words that Ashehu Chaynashem, that it was camping there, means you had to be camping there for a time. Okay, that's number one. Number two is, if you look later on just give me 1 second. We should get the next one, right? Yeah. Okay. The next proof is from, look at Pasuk Tes Vav 15. This is where Yisro sees the Jewish people lining up in front of Moshe, and they're all waiting for him. So Yisro asks Moshe, what's going on? Moshe said to his father-in-law, the nation comes to me to seek out God. If they have a matter, they come to me. And I judge between a man and his friend. and I make known to them the decrees of God and his teachings. Okay, the decrees of God and his teachings, when did they get that?
After the,
What?
this is
After the Torah was given. So it sounds like, again, this is another support to say that it happened after the Torah was given. Now, without getting into it right now too much, at least this support, the Jewish people had received certain mitzvahs already. Even before the Torah was given, certain mitzvahs they had that were given to them in the desert. And therefore, it is possible to say that when Moshe says, I'm teaching them the laws, it means the laws that they have already received. But again, if you just read it, it sounds like it's after the Torah was given. All right. That's
many people were teaching before.
Yeah, but if the fact that he says that the decrees of God and his teachings, it sounds more like not, just like, Avram Avinu, that they all knew the Torah beforehand. It sounds like the laws of God, the decrees of God, actual mitzvahs, actual thing, actual commandments, actual laws.
Yeah,
But okay,
very convenient.
now, the next proof. Take a look at Pasuk Chav Zayin 27. Now, Pasuk Chav Zayin 27 is after the Torah states that Moshe listened to his father-in-law's advice about setting up the court system. And what does it say? Vayishalach Moshe es chaisnai. Moshe sent off his father-in-law. Vayelach le'al artzai, and he went to his land. So Yitro shows up, gives some advice. Moshe takes it, and what's next? Sends him off. Okay. Now for the next thing, you don't have this, because the next thing we have to see is actually in Bamidbar, the book of Bamidbar. So I'll just ask you to listen in.
But this is the last one. It means he sent him without his approval.
No, not necessarily. Now, just next thing is Bamidbar Yud Chav Tes. Okay. Now, this is in Parshas Baloscha, in the book of Bamidbar, and it says, and this is Vayomer Moshe. Now the Jewish people are now already in the desert. This is already the second year into the desert. Vayomer Moshe l'chayva ben Rula Midyani chaysen Moshe. Moshe said to Chovav, which is another name for Yisro, his father-in-law, Noisim anachnu lamokim. We are traveling to the place Asher Amar Hashem Oisei Yaten Lachem, that Hashem said, I will give it to you. L'chai tanu beitavnu lach. Come with us, and we will do good with you. Kashem diber tov al Yisrael. For Hashem has spoken good over Israel. So Moshe is saying to Yisro, come with us. We're going into Eretz Yisrael. Come with us, and you'll benefit the same way we benefit. Yisro says, I'm not going. I'm going to my land and to my birthplace. Moshe says, don't leave us. For you know our encampments in the wilderness, and you have been eyes for us. It shall be when you walk with us, when you go with us. The good that Hashem will do with us, he will do with you. Okay? So now, Moshe says to Yisro, we're going to Eretz Yisrael. Come with us. Yisro says, I'm going home. Moshe says, no, come with us, and you'll experience the good that we experience. End. That's the end of the story. That's the end of the conversation. There is nothing more after that. Then the Torah goes, then it talks about that they went and they traveled. And they traveled. Okay? So now, what's the end of the story? What is the end of the story? Did Yisro go back or not?
Yes.
How do you know? The answer is, we have that in our Parsha. The assumption is that when there is an assumption made that in our parsha, when it says, and Moshe sent his father-in-law and he went to the land, he went. And that's the conclusion of this story.
Oh.
That's the conclusion of this conversation. There's an assumption like that. Meaning, Vayishalach Moshe Chosno doesn't mean right away. Doesn't mean he sent him away right away. Eventually he sent him.
It started later on, it finished in this part.
So to speak. There's a break in between. There's a break in between. We have Yisro coming, and then we have Yisro going. Then we have Yisro here still. Yisro says he wants to go. Moshe says, please don't go. No conclusion here. But here it says he sent him. All right. So now if this is all coming together, this story, this conversation, without question, is taking place after the Torah was given. This conversation is taking place after the Torah was given. And because it's actually, as the Ramban points out, after it brings this down, it talks about how, let me just get the place here. Okay. It was all right. Based on what's happening here in Parshas Baloscha, this is the second year of their traveling from Har Sinai. So if you learn, right, that this story of Yisro is happening after the Torah was given, okay, so then you've got, Parshas Baloscha filling in something we don't have in our Parsha, and then in our Parsha we have filling in what it doesn't say in Baloscha. But that would be another support to say that when did Yisro show up? Yisro showed up after the Torah was given. That would all work together. If Yisro is there after the Torah was given, and that's when he leaves, right? That's when he wants to leave, and that's when he leaves. So then it makes sense to say that our Parsha is talking about that also. That it's talking about in the second year. We have in Parshas Baloscha in the second year, Yisro is leaving. And in our Parsha, it says when he came, that he came and he gave his advice and then he left. Okay, so that would mean, or that would seem to support the idea that this is all happening at the same time, which means it's happening in the second year of the Jewish people leaving Egypt, which is after the Torah was given. Okay, now just thinking about it right now, it would seem like, well, maybe what it means is that he came before, right? And he stuck around for a long time, and then eventually he left. Because, there is, like we say, there is a missing piece here, right? There is a missing piece. That Baloscha is kind of the missing piece between what happens in our Parsha, and then the pasuk at the end that says he left, he sent them away. And then you have kind of fill in this, right? Whatever you're going to learn, according to this approach, that the pasuk in our Parsha that says he sent him, right, is not happening right away. It's happening later on when it says this. So, okay, the first part of the Parsha is talking about he came before, and then the rest of it is because he stuck around the whole time. But I guess according to this approach, if that pasuk of Vayishalach and he sent him happened in the second year, the assumption should be that the whole Parsha is talking about the same time also. Not talking about a completely different time. Not like you'd have that the Parsha itself, one part of it talking about, at one point talking about before the Torah was given, and then afterwards you have after the Torah was given. I'm not sure, but this is another proof that he brings.
Russia mentioned it was the first time I read. He left to convert his family.
Right, that's why he left. That's the reason why he left.
It means Moshe convinced him to stay, but yes, I agree to stay, but I want to come with my family.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
No, he wanted to convince him to stay with him.
And Yisro wanted to go back.
Benefit. He got, okay, I will go to my family, convert it, bring...
Where do you see that part?
No, but why I need to convert? What is the reason? To convert, stay in Midian?
I don't know, but right now, all it says he wanted to go back to convert them. I guess eventually maybe they come again. Maybe. That's a good point. All right. Now, so the next thing that the Ramban that we have to deal with in the Ramban is, okay, let's say we say that he came first. And then also the Ramban shows from the book of Devarim, it also would appear that this is all happening after the Torah was given. And then but the question is like this. If Yisro came after the Torah was given, then why did the Torah talk about it beforehand? Right? Okay. It's an obvious question. Yeah. So the Ramban cites the comment of the Ibn Ezra, and Ibn Ezra says that the reason why is for the following reason. Last week's Parshas Beshalach, ends off with the war against Amalek. And now after the war with Amalek, we talk about Yisro. Why? Because there's a connection. Because later on in history, when Shaul HaMelech, when King Shaul is given the job to destroy Amalek, which he didn't completely do, but he was going to do it, but he was sent to do it. So in the book of Shmuel, we read that there was a people called the Cani who were living together with the Amalekim. Cani are descendants of Yisro. And therefore, Shaul sent them a message that you should get away. Don't stick around with them. Separate yourselves from Amalek because I'm coming after them. So we know that Shaul HaMelech, King Shaul, sent the Cani, or descendants of Yisro, a message that they should separate. Because even though they were living amongst Amalek, because of the merit of Yisro, they would be spared. They weren't from Amalek, but were living amongst Amalek. And if Amalek would be attacked, they could be damaged too. And therefore, there was a message sent to them: separate, go away. Says Ibn Ezra, that is what the Torah is alluding to, hinting to, when the Torah teaches us the story of Yisro next to Amalek. Yes, chronologically, Yisro came after the Torah was given. But the reason why the Torah wants to mention Yisro before is because it wants to mention Yisro next to the story of Amalek, where the Torah talks about how Amalek is to be destroyed. Right after that, it talks about Yisro and what Yisro did for the Jewish people, to bring out that when you attack Amalek, remember the benefit that Yisro gave to the Jewish people and spare his descendants. So that is the Ibn Ezra's answer, according to the opinion that Yisro came after the Torah was given. Why did the Torah write it before? Okay, so these are a couple of comments that the Ramban says, according to the opinion that Yisro came after the Torah was given. The Ramban himself sides with the opinion that Yisro came before the Torah was given. Why? Because he asks the following question. Let's look back in our parsha.
You almost convinced me.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
I'm wrong.
Now, okay. Pasuk Aleph. Let's go back to verse 1. Vayishma Yisro Kohen Midyan Chaysen Moshe Skol Asher Asar Lekim LeMoshe L'Yisrael Amoi Ki Yotzi Hashem Es Yisrael Mitzrayim. What did Yisro hear about? The Exodus from Egypt, which can include the splitting of the Red Sea. Okay? What's missing? What's missing? If Yisro came after the Torah was given, what's missing?
There is no Torah.
No mention of the giving of the Torah. We know from the way the Torah itself that talks about the giving of the Torah, that the giving of the Torah was an unbelievable event in which the Jewish people experienced God talking to Moshe. They heard the words of the Torah. There was it was clear to them without any question the Torah was coming from God. It was an experience. They experienced God's presence at a level of prophecy. Why is that not mentioned? If he came after the Torah was given, the Torah should say, and he heard about leaving Mitzrayim and the giving of the Torah. And then if you look later on in Pasuk Ches, verse 8, Vayesaper Moshe l'chaisnai, Moshe told his father-in-law, It's Kol Asher Asa Hashem L'Pharaoh L'Mitzrayim, all that Hashem did to Pharaoh into Egypt, Alodeis Yisrael, because of the Jewish people, all the trouble that found them on the way, Hashem and Hashem saved them. Moshe tells them about all the problems they had and how Hashem saved them. What's missing? The same thing. Moshe, now that Moshe is telling Yisro about it, Moshe should be telling Yisro about the giving of the Torah. Therefore, this question to the Ramban is the question that says that, and again, the way the Ramban brings from the Pesukim and Devarim, in the book of Devarim, how it talks about, was there ever a people that Hashem spoke to them? All the whole experience of Sinai, the Torah mentions. That was an experience that without only question, Moshe should be telling Yisro about if he's coming afterwards. That means he missed it. So now he should be telling him about it. So therefore, the Ramban, he sides with the opinion that Yisro came before the Torah was given. Okay? Now the Ramban has to address some of the supports that we mentioned before about the fact that it seems that Yisro came before. So if we go back to the first support, which was when it says in Pasuk Hey, verse 5, Vayavai Yisro chaysan Moshe v'anav ishtoi el Moshe, Yisro came El Midbar Shulchan Sham Har Elikim, to the desert that he was camping there, at the mountain of God. So he said he's coming to Har Sinai, he's coming to Mount Sinai, and we're saying he's coming to where Moshe was encamping at Sinai. Says the Ramban, got to read the pasuk a little different. First of all, where is if we're talking about, as you said, that Yisro hears about the exodus from Egypt, hears about the splitting of the Red Sea, and he right away comes, right? So what are we doing at Mount Sinai? What are we doing there? Says the Ramban, if we'd have some kind of a map of ancient Israel at the time, right, we would actually find that you have the Sinai, you have the desert, you have Mount Sinai, and then you have Midian, the country that Yisro came from, the country that Moshe Rabbeinu ran away to, which is where he landed up with Yisro, marrying Yisro's daughter, being his shepherd, right? This was all in Midian. Midian is very close to Mount Sinai. We know that because when Moshe had the experience of the burning bush, where did that happen? At Mount Sinai. That's where it happened. And it says that Moshe was grazing his father-in-law's sheep there. Why is Moshe grazing his father-in-law's sheep at Sinai when he lives in Midian? The answer is because Sinai is not far from Midian. Therefore, says the Ramban, what happened is like this. Yisro came from Midian. Where was his first stop? At Mount Sinai. That was his first stop. Maybe it was even his first stop because he know that this is a special place, right? Hashem told Moshe, the Jewish people are destined to serve me on the mountain. So it could be that Yisro stopped at this mountain because he knew it was a special place. But this was his first stop. And it was here at Mount Sinai that he sent to Moshe the message, I am here. And what happened after that? Moshe goes out to greet him. Moshe goes to Mount Sinai to greet him. And then it says he brought Yisro to his tent. That means they then took Yisro from Mount Sinai back to where the Jewish people were. So how do we read the pasuk? We read the verse like this. Yisro came to the desert where he was camping there. Stop, comma, Har Elikim, at the mountain of God. At the mountain of God is going on the first half where it says Yisro came. Yisro came to the desert where Moshe was encamping. Moshe was encamping in the desert, that we know. But the pasuk Har Elikim is not going on where Moshe camped. It's going on where it says Yisro came, because Mount Sinai is part of that desert. The desert was a whole area, and Mount Sinai was part of that desert. So Yisro came to the desert where Moshe was camping to the mountain of God. That's where Yisro came. And that was in the desert where Moshe was camping. It was all part of the same area. And then it says, Yisro said to Moshe, here I am. That's the message from Mount Sinai. And then Moshe goes out to greet him and then brings him back. So therefore, the fact that there's a mention here of going to Mount Sinai is not because that's where Moshe is, but because that's where Yisro came to. Now, one last part, and that is, what's the whole story about Yisro coming? It says Yisro left, right? At the end of in this week's Parshat, it says that Moshe sent him off, and then later on by Midbar, Moshe is talking to Yisro again, and he tries to convince Yisro not to. Yisro wants to leave. Yisro doesn't, and Yisro wants to leave. Moshe tells him not to leave. Then it doesn't say anything. What's happening there? Says the Ramban. You know what happened? Yisro came before the Torah was given, and then he left. Like the Parsha says. He left. Did he leave right after the Torah was given? Before? It says he left. According to Ramban, it'd have to be that he left. It would make sense that he left right away. And then he came back. When Moshe is talking to Yisro in Parshas Ba'aleischa, that's because after Yisro left, he came back. And he was back with the Jewish people.
What are you talking about? This is he converted to come back?
He came back. And that would work like what you said. He went back to them to convert them, and then they came back. Okay? But then Moshe says, we're traveling on. Come with us. Yisro says, I'm going back. Moshe says, come with us. What's the end of the story? Says the Ramban. He stayed. Doesn't say he left. He wanted to leave. Moshe tells him, don't leave. And then it says nothing. So what happened? He stayed. He stayed. The first time he came before the Torah was given, he left. Then at some point after it was given, he came back. He wanted to leave again. Moshe tells him stay, and he stayed. And he has certain sources to show that Yisro entered Eretz Yisrael with them, or at least his children entered Eretz Yisrael with them. Okay, one more thing. We mentioned before that Shaul had to tell Yisro's descendants, Yisro's family, the Cani, to leave Amalek. Weren't they with the Jewish people? So says the Ramban, maybe not. Maybe after Moshe died, either Yisro went back or his children went back, and those children were living amongst Amalekim. And again, in the merit of Yisro, Shaul told them, go away from them, separate yourselves. Or he says that maybe Cani, that family of Yisro, aren't his direct descendants. It's his broader family. It's not his descendants. His descendants were with the Jewish people. But he had other family members that were not. And again, those family members were living amongst Amalek, and in the merit of their relative Yisro, they were spared. So this would be, according to the opinion which the Ramban seems to side with, that Yisro came after the Torah was given. We have the Ramban's proof based on this question of why is no mention of it. And then the Ramban deals with the supports that to say that Yisro came after. He deals with them, and he explains how Yisro first came to Mount Sinai. It wasn't that Moshe was encamping there. When we talk about when we talk about how the pasuk says Yisro left, and then again he's leaving in Parshas Ba'aleischa, says the Ramban, that's not one big story. It's not the same story. It's different periods of time. And what about the fact that if Yisro stayed with Jewish people, why do we have his descendants amongst Amalek? Either because at some point of time his descendants went back to Midian, or it means his greater family, not his direct descendants. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for listening.